thought. Put your surname in the corner, stamped it, signed it, stored it in a fireproof drawer. I underlined the margin. Was this ever really yours? Ideas drifting through the hallway, you just happened to close the door. Paper walls and public words, you draw lines through the air like you own the verbs. How do you fence in something heard? Paper walls and public words, you keep calling it mine. Yours, mine, yours. But it lives outside those terms. You built a gate out of jargon and of secrets, reading footnotes like they're bolts across a fence. But language has a habit of leaking through the lattice. Every phrase you try to capture slips into another accent. Paper walls and public words, you draw lines through the air like you own the verbs. How do you fence in something heard? Paper walls and public words, you keep calling it mine. Yours, mine, yours. But it lives outside those terms. Whose breath was on that sentence first? Whose tongue turned the silence into verse? You can circle every letter, claim the ink, the line, the name. But the moment someone speaks it, it stops playing your little game. Paper walls and public words, you draw lines through the air like you own the verbs. How do you fence in something heard? Paper walls and public words, you keep calling it mine. Yours, mine, yours. But it lives outside those terms.
Introduction, a historical timeline of the public domain and intellectual commons. From the earliest marks of artisans to the digital frontiers of artificial intelligence, the concept of the public domain, knowledge, culture, and innovation freely accessible to all, has evolved alongside human civilization. This timeline traces the shifting boundaries between private ownership and shared intellectual heritage, revealing how societies have balanced exclusive rights with collective access across millennia. The public domain is not merely a legal construct but a living tradition of open knowledge, from Mesopotamian potters' signatures to the digital archives of today. It encompasses sacred texts, scientific discoveries, artistic masterpieces, and technological breakthroughs that have transcended individual ownership to become part of humanity's shared inheritance. Yet the struggle over what belongs to the commons has been a constant tension. Laws, treaties, and technological advancements have repeatedly reshaped the landscape, sometimes expanding access, other times locking away culture behind extended monopolies. From the Library of Alexandria to the rise of open-source software, from the Statute of Anne to the Sonny Bono Act, this timeline highlights pivotal moments when societies decided what knowledge should remain free and what could be claimed as property. As we enter an era of AI-generated content, blockchain-based art, and genetic engineering, the public domain faces new challenges. Can algorithms trained on centuries of human creativity claim ownership? Will 3D printing and open-source biology democratize innovation or invite new enclosures? The answers will determine whether the digital age becomes a renaissance of shared knowledge or an unprecedented privatization of ideas. This chronology invites reflection on a fundamental question: who controls the past, present, and future of human knowledge, and for whose benefit? The story of the public domain is, ultimately, the story of power, creativity, and the commons we all share. Key themes explored: origins of ownership, from Sumerian property laws to Venetian patents, how exclusivity first took shape. Expansion and restriction, copyright term extensions, patent battles, and the pushback against perpetual monopolies. Open movements, the rise of free software, Creative Commons, and open science as counterbalances. Digital disruptions, how the Internet, AI, and blockchain are rewriting the rules of cultural access. Future frontiers, space heritage, neural copyrights, and the next battles over who owns ideas. As you explore this timeline, consider, what knowledge should belong to everyone and how do we protect the intellectual commons for generations to come? 3500 BCE, first trademarks Potter's marks, Mesopotamia. Equation, artisan signatures plus ceramic vessels equals early source identifiers. Scope, handcrafted goods authentication. Significance, first evidence of brand protection concepts emerging. 3200 BCE, proto-cuneiform accounting tokens. Equation, clay envelopes plus transaction records equals early information control. Scope, Mesopotamian trade documentation. Significance, first physical system for securing commercial knowledge. 2800 BCE, Sumerian cuneiform tablets. Equation, standardized writing plus public inscriptions equals early shared records. Scope, administrative legal texts. Significance, first system for recording public information. 2300 BCE, Egyptian pyramid texts. Equation, sacred carvings plus royal tombs equals early protected knowledge. Scope, funerary inscriptions. Significance, first example of restricted access spiritual texts. 2000 BCE, Code of Hammurabi Babylon. Equation, royal decrees plus common land rights equals early communal resource principles. Scope, first written laws addressing land and resource allocation. Significance, established that some resources remained outside private ownership. 1800 BCE, Babylonian map of the world. Equation, clay tablet plus cosmological depiction equals early PD cartography. Scope, Mesopotamian worldview. Significance, oldest known attempt to map shared spatial understanding. 1500 BCE, Vedic oral traditions India. Equation, memorized texts plus communal recitation equals oral knowledge commons. Scope, Rigveda preservation. Significance, non-written cultural preservation. 1300 BCE, medical knowledge commons Egypt. Equation, papyrus scrolls plus temple archives equals shared healing techniques. Scope, Edwin Smith papyrus surgical knowledge. Significance, early example of medical knowledge as public resource. 1000 BCE, Chinese bronze inscriptions. Equation, royal decrees plus permanent casting equals early unalterable public records. Scope, Zhou dynasty legal pronouncements. Significance, created enduring public legal documentation. 800 BCE, Phoenician alphabet spread. Equation, simplified writing plus maritime trade equals linguistic commons expansion. Scope, Mediterranean commerce. Significance, enabled cross-cultural knowledge sharing through accessible script. 700 BCE, Homeric epics codified Greece. Equation, oral poetry written texts equals cultural PD foundation. Scope, Iliad Odyssey. Significance, transition to shared written works. 600, Chinese imperial examination system. Equation, Confucian texts plus standardized testing equals knowledge meritocracy. Scope, government recruitment. Significance, made classical works into public reference standards. 600 BCE, Greek coin standardization. Equation, city-state mints plus standardized designs equals economic trust system. Scope, Aegean trade currency. Significance, early state-guaranteed visual identifiers. 500 BCE, Confucian Analects China. Equation, philosophical teachings plus open dissemination equals ethical commons. Scope, governance principles. Significance, non-proprietary intellectual framework. 400 BCE, Greek theater competitions. Equation, state-sponsored plays plus mandatory performance equals early cultural commons. Scope, Dionysia festival tragedies. Significance, established model for publicly funded creative works. 300 BCE, Library of Alexandria. Equation, state-collected works plus no copyright equals ancient knowledge commons. Scope, all written works in the ancient world. Significance, first major institutional attempt to create a shared knowledge repository. 200, Roman residential derelicti doctrine. Equation, abandoned property plus first occupant equals return to common pool. Scope, land and goods law. Significance, early legal concept of reversion to commons. 250 BCE, Ashoka's Rock Edicts India. Equation, imperial proclamations plus public display equals PD governance texts. Scope, Buddhist moral codes across Mauryan Empire. Significance, early state-sanctioned public information system. 100 CE, Pliny's Natural History Rome. Equation, encyclopedic compilation plus open circulation equals knowledge aggregation. Scope, scientific observations. Significance, early universal reference work. 150 CE, Roman Actio Serviana commercial pledge law. Equation, debtor's assets plus creditor claims is not equal to intellectual creations. Scope, business collateral rules. Significance, established that ideas couldn't be seized as property. 200, Roman lex metalli vipascensis. Equation, mining regulations plus public posting equals resource management transparency. Scope, Portuguese mining district. Significance, early model for public access to industrial regulations. 500 BCE, 500 CE, Roman law foundations. Equation, residential communes air sunlight plus residential publici public property plus residential universitatis municipal property equals early concept of shared resources. Scope, classification of property in Roman jurisprudence. Significance, established legal distinctions between private, communal, and state-owned resources, indirectly influencing later public domain principles. 529 to 534 CE, Justinian's Corpus Juris Civilis Byzantine Empire. Equation, residential communes common property plus public trust doctrine equals state's duty to protect shared resources. Scope, compiled Roman property laws. Significance, preserved Roman concepts of public-private property for later European legal systems. 618 CE, Tang Dynasty poetry anthologies. Equation, oral verse plus state compilation equals early literary commons. Scope, Chinese imperial poetry collections. Significance, standardized shared cultural texts, accessible to scholars, fostering a proto-public domain literary tradition. 700 CE, Beowulf composition. Equation, oral epic plus anonymous authorship equals literary commons. Scope, Germanic heroic poetry. Significance, natural cultural sharing. 800, Carolingian minuscule standardization. Equation, imperial script reform plus monastic copying equals knowledge diffusion. Scope, Holy Roman Empire administrative documents. Significance, created shared writing system enabling PD content creation. 814 CE, Carolingian minuscule reform. Equation, uniform script plus monastic scriptoria equals knowledge diffusion. Scope, Holy Roman Empire administration. Significance, enabled cross-regional knowledge sharing. 850 CE, Tangwood block printing. Equation, mass printing plus Buddhist sutras equals scalable distribution. Scope, Chinese texts. Significance, reduced knowledge barriers. 900, Islamic ijazah system. Equation, knowledge transmission plus scholar certification equals controlled public domain. Scope, Hadith scholarship. Significance, balanced knowledge sharing with attribution requirements. 950, Cordoba Caliphate Library. Equation, 400,000 volumes plus interfaith access equals medieval knowledge hub. Scope, Islamic Golden Age scholarship. Significance, model for multicultural knowledge sharing. 1023 CE, Chinese paper money system. Equation, state monopoly plus anti-counterfeiting equals early IP enforcement. Scope, Song dynasty currency. Significance, first national system combating unauthorized copying. 1050 CE, Song dynasty patent-like grants. Equation, craft innovations plus imperial rewards equals pre-modern IP. Scope, agricultural mechanical advances. Significance, temporary inventor privileges. 1086, Doomsday Book England. Equation, Royal Survey plus public record equals permanent PD government work. Scope, land ownership records. Significance, early example of government works as public information. 1100, Chinese movable type. Equation, clay characters plus reusable typesetting equals knowledge democratization. Scope, Bai Sheng's invention. Significance, enabled mass production beyond government control. 1100, Chinese jiaozi paper currency. Equation, state monopoly plus standardized printing equals early anti-counterfeiting. Scope, Song dynasty economy. Significance, first system balancing public trust with proprietary security features. 1150 CE, Magna Carta precursors. Equation, feudal agreements plus public proclamation equals legal commons. Scope, regional governance. Significance, public legal access. 1154 CE, Allied Dry-Size World Map. Equation, Royal Commission plus public access equals geographic commons. Scope, Mediterranean cartography. Significance, shared navigational knowledge funded by ruler. 1200, Mongol Yam postal system. Equation, state communications plus public infrastructure equals government knowledge network. Scope, imperial administration. Significance, early model for public information systems. 1204 CE, Fourth Crusade manuscript losses. Equation, sacked libraries plus destroyed texts equals cultural commons vulnerability. Scope, Byzantine literary heritage. Significance, highlighted fragility of shared knowledge without institutional protection. 1250 CE, scholastic commentaries. Equation, classical texts plus annotations equals shared academic tradition. Scope, university discourse. Significance, open scholarly culture. 1286, first pharmaceutical monopoly Venice. Equation, medical formula plus 10-year exclusivity equals early drug patent. Scope, Angelo of Padua's fever remedy. Significance, showed tension between public health and private profit. 13th century, common law evolving in England. Equation, customary rights plus royal courts equals early public right exceptions to private ownership. Scope, rights of way, fishing, grazing. Significance, recognized communal uses of private land, a precursor to public domain limitations. 1350 CE, Islamic Waqf system. Equation, endowed libraries plus public access equals charitable commons. Scope, educational institutions. Significance, sustained knowledge access. 1363, English archery law. Equation, mandatory practice plus public grounds equals skill commons. Scope, national defense. Significance, created shared infrastructure for knowledge transmission. 1400 CE, Korean movable type. Equation, metal type plus mass printing equals enhanced dissemination. Scope, Joseon texts. Significance, improved text scalability. 1421, first patent Florence. Equation, architectural innovation plus 3-year monopoly equals first modern patent. Scope, Filippo Brunelleschi's barge design. Significance, established time-limited monopolies for inventions. 1439, Korean rain gauge standardization. Equation, state meteorology plus uniform measurement equals public data system. Scope, agricultural planning. Significance, early example of government collected open data. 1447, first author privilege Venice. Equation, historian's work plus 5-year protection equals precursor to copyright. Scope, Marcantonio Sabellico's Venetian history. Significance, recognized creative labor before modern copyright. 1455, Gutenberg Bible printing. Equation, mass production, copyright laws equals uncontrolled knowledge spread. Scope, early printed works. Significance, demonstrated need for copyright systems, making their absence notable. 1474, Venetian Patent Statute. Equation, novel inventions plus 10-year exclusivity equals first patent system. Scope, Venetian Republic technologies. Significance, created formal IP protections with expiration dates. 1486 CE, Malleus Maleficarum. Equation, printed polemic plus no copyright equals rapid ideological spread. Scope, witch hunting manual. Significance, uncontrolled information risks. 1492 CE, Columbus' logs publication. Equation, exploration records plus royal dissemination equals public geographic knowledge. Scope, Spanish Crown reports. Significance, early example of state-sponsored information sharing for public benefit. 1494, Aldine Press Greek classics. Equation, ancient texts plus commercial printing equals Renaissance knowledge revival. Scope, Aristotle and Plato editions. Significance, first mass-market PD reissues. 1518, first music copyright Venice. Equation, Ottaviano Petrucci's scores plus printing monopoly equals early music IP. Scope, polyphonic music printing. Significance, began specialization of creative IP protections. 1520 CE, Luther S95 Theses. Equation, printed pamphlets plus distribution equals Reformation Commons. Scope, religious reform. Significance, printing's disruptive power. 1543 CE, Copernicus' heliocentric publication. Equation, scientific theory plus printed dissemination equals knowledge commons expansion. Scope, de revolutionibus orbium coalescium. Significance, challenged proprietary religious knowledge with open scientific inquiry. 1557, Stationers' Company monopoly England. Equation, printing rights equals Crown granted monopoly pre-copyright censorship. Scope, controlled book production under royal authority. Significance, showed dangers of perpetual monopolies, leading to pushback e.g. Statute of N. 1560 CE, Mercator projection publication. Equation, mathematical cartography plus open dissemination equals navigation commons. Scope, global sea charts. Significance, freely shared technical advancement. 1561, English Guild Secrets Case. Equation, trade secrets plus public interest equals limited monopoly duration. Scope, cloth weaving techniques. Significance, recognize temporal limits on proprietary knowledge. 1583, Case of Monopolies Darcy v. Allian, England. Equation, royal patent equals void if restricting common trade anti-monopoly ruling. Scope, private lawsuit challenging Crown-granted monopoly. Significance, early common law rejection of perpetual private monopolies, influencing copyright limits. 1597, English Poor Law Act. Equation, public welfare plus local taxation equals commons-based support. Scope, parish relief systems. Significance, established legal framework for communal responsibility. 1600 CE, East India Company Charter. Equation, trade monopoly plus public trade routes equals early IP tension. Scope, British colonial commerce. Significance, showed state-backed monopolies clashing with open trade principles. 1603, No Theatre Canon Japan. Equation, shogunate patronage plus fixed scripts equals cultural preservation. Scope, traditional performance arts. Significance, early state-supported artistic commons. 1611 CE, King James Bible. Equation, state translation plus no copyright equals religious commons. Scope, English scriptures. Significance, cultural reference text. 1623, Statute of Monopolies England. Equation, monopoly term less than or equal to 21 years except patents for new inventions. Scope, limited royal monopolies on trade and printing. Significance, early legal constraint on perpetual exclusive rights, paving the way for time-limited intellectual property. 1637 CE, Descartes Discourse publication. Equation, vernacular philosophy plus wide distribution equals knowledge democratization. Scope, European scientific method. Significance, broke Latin monopoly on academic works. 1641, First American patent Massachusetts. Equation, salt production method plus exclusive rights equals colonial IP precedent. Scope, Samuel Winslow's manufacturing process. Significance, showed early American balance of innovation and public benefit. 1653, First Scientific Journal Philosophical Transactions. Equation, peer review plus public dissemination equals open science model. Scope, Royal Society publications. Significance, created template for academic knowledge sharing. 1662, Licensing of the Press Act England. Equation, censorship system plus stationers control equals knowledge restriction. Scope, all printed materials. Significance, demonstrated dangers of unchecked publishing monopolies. 1675, Royal Observatory founding UK. Equation, government science plus published findings equals PD research model. Scope, astronomical data. Significance, established precedent for public science. 1687 CE, Newton's Principia Mathematica. Equation, universal laws plus published findings equals scientific commons cornerstone. Scope, physics and mathematics. Significance, established precedent for sharing foundational scientific discoveries. 1690 CE, Locke's two treatises. Equation, natural rights plus public discourse equals philosophical commons. Scope, political theory. Significance, property public balance. 1710, Statute of N Great Britain. Equation, copyright equals 14 years plus optional renewal of 14 first modern copyright law. Scope, applied to books and printed works. Significance, first legal recognition that copyright should expire, implicitly creating a public domain for older works. 1724, London Library founding. Equation, private collection plus public access equals hybrid knowledge model. Scope, early circulating library. Significance, transitional step toward public libraries. 1726 CE, Swift's Gulliver parody. Equation, satirical fiction plus no copyright equals transformative work precedent. Scope, English literature. Significance, early example of unprotected derivative creativity. 1735, Engravers Copyright Act UK. Equation, prints plus 14-year term equals first visual arts protection. Scope, Hogarth's engravings. Significance, expanded copyright beyond textual works. 1744, Edinburgh Medical Essays. Equation, prize competitions plus published results equals medical commons. Scope, Scottish Enlightenment medicine. Significance, early crowdsourced medical research. 1750 CE, Almanac Wars America. Equation, public data plus publisher competition equals information commons. Scope, practical knowledge. Significance, factual accessibility. 1758, Blackstone's Commentaries on the Laws of England. Equation, absolute property rights, waste doctrine equals limits on ownership. Scope, defined private property with natural law constraints. Significance, argued property rights guarantee infinite, laying groundwork for public domain exceptions. 1762, Diderot's Encyclopédie completion. Equation, collective knowledge plus commercial publication equals Enlightenment Commons. Scope, 28-volume reference work. Significance, demonstrated tension between open knowledge and profit. 1769 CE, Watt's steam engine patent. Equation, mechanical innovation plus 14-year monopoly equals early industrial IP. Scope, STEAM technology. Significance, set stage for debates over innovation access versus creator rights. 1781, what STEAM patent extension? Equation, parliamentary lobbying plus 25-year monopoly equals first IP term controversy. Scope, industrial revolution technology. Significance, sparked debates about appropriate patent durations. 1790, U.S. Copyright Act. Equation, copyright equals 14 years plus optional 14 with registration required. Scope, covered maps, books, and charts. Significance, define the U.S. public domain by setting expiration rules, encouraging cultural reuse. 1776, U.S. Declaration of Independence. Equation, government document plus no copyright equals immediate PD scope, foundational national text. Significance, established model for government works entering PD upon creation. 1783 CE, Webster S. Speller. Equation, education text plus limited copyright equals early cultural commons. Scope, American English. Significance, balanced access. 1787, U.S. Constitutional IP Clause. Equation, Congress power plus limited times equals foundational IP balance. Scope, Article I, Section 8. Significance, embedded PD concept in America's founding document. 1804, French Civil Code Napoleonic Code. Equation, droit d'auteur author s rights equals moral plus economic rights private law framework. Scope, intellectual property as a private right. Significance, continental Europe's stricter author-centric view later clashed with Anglo-American public domain concepts. 1800 CE, Library of Congress. Equation, federal collection plus public access equals national repository. Scope, government works. Significance, democratic knowledge. 1813, U.S. Vaccine Act. Equation, medical innovation plus federal distribution equals early health commons. Scope, smallpox vaccine. Significance, first U.S. attempt at medical knowledge sharing. 1814, steam-powered printing. Equation, Koenig press plus industrial scale equals first media explosion. Scope, newspaper production. Significance, accelerated PD content creation. 1816 CE, Davy's miner's lamp patent. Equation, life-saving invention plus refused patent equals moral IP exception. Scope, coal mining safety. Significance, creator prioritized public good over monopoly. 1821 CE, Mexico's independence printing press. Equation, revolutionary texts plus mass printing equals political commons. Scope, post-colonial propaganda. Significance, enabled rapid spread of public governance ideas without restrictions. 1823, Mechanics Institute movement. Equation, worker education plus shared libraries equals industrial knowledge access. Scope, vocational training. Significance, democratized technical education. 1829, first U.S. trade secret case Vickery v. Welch. Equation, secret chocolate recipe is not equal to perpetual protection. Scope, Massachusetts court ruling. Significance, established limits on knowledge hoarding. 1831, U.S. Copyright Act Amendment. Equation, Copyright equals 28 years plus optional 14 longer initial term. Scope, extended protection for books, music, and artworks. Significance, reflected growing commercial value of creative works while maintaining a predictable path to the public domain. 1834, Wheaton v. Peters, U.S. Supreme Court. Equation, court ruling equals no common law copyright after publication, only statutory terms apply. Scope, clarified limits of copyright. Significance, reinforced public domain by denying perpetual rights. 1836, U.S. Patent Office Fire. Equation, lost records plus reconstruction effort equals knowledge preservation crisis. Scope, early American inventions. Significance, highlighted vulnerability of centralized IP systems. 1842, copyright cases U.S. e.g. Folsom v. Marsh. Equation, fair use equals unauthorized use allowed if transformative private law doctrine. Scope, common law fair use defense in copyright suits. Significance, judicial recognition of public access as a limit on private copyright. 1843 CE, Ada Lovelace's algorithm notes. Equation, mathematical commentary plus public domain equals first computer program. Scope, analytical engine concepts. Significance, unprotected foundational tech concepts. 1845, Morse code patent war. Equation, basic communication method plus overbroad patent equals legal backlash. Scope, telegraph technology. Significance, established limits on fundamental idea patents. 1849, U.S. Federal Reports Copyright. Equation, judicial opinions plus no copyright equals legal PD precedent. Scope, court decisions. Significance, established free access to laws. 1851, Great Exhibition patent protections. Equation, international showcase plus temporary IP waivers equals innovation sharing. Scope, Crystal Palace inventions. Significance, balanced display with inventor protections. 1854, British Patent Law Amendment. Equation, global filings plus 16-year term equals imperial IP standard. Scope, colonial trade. Significance, forced Western IP on colonies. 1857, photographic works ruling France. Equation, mechanical reproductions is not equal to original creative works. Scope, early photography copyright. Significance, limited copyright for certain works, expanding potential PD content. 1862, U.S. Department of Agriculture Organic Act. Equation, agricultural research plus public dissemination equals PD science model. Scope, federal farming innovations. Significance, created framework for public interest IP. 1865 CE, Telegraph Union. Equation, standardized protocols plus cooperation equals communication commons. Scope, global telegraphy. Significance, technical collaboration. 1870, U.S. Trademark Act. Equation, brand identifiers plus commerce equals formal trademark system. Scope, commercial goods. Significance, created new IP category with different PD rules. 1871, Trademark Registration Act UK. Equation, trademark rights equals limited term plus public domain generic terms. Scope, brand protection versus public language use. Significance, showed private IP rights yielding to communal language over time. 1873, Vienna World's Fair rejection. Equation, international exhibitors plus patent fears equals first global IP tensions. Scope, industrial exhibitions. Significance, revealed need for cross-border IP protections. 1875, International Meteorological Organization. Equation, weather data plus global sharing equals scientific commons. Scope, climate observation. Significance, early multinational data sharing. 1876 CE, Bell's telephone patent race. Equation, simultaneous invention plus legal priority equals patent system stress test. Scope, telecommunications. Significance, revealed flaws in first-to-file systems. 1879, Edison's light bulb patent. Equation, basic utility plus broad claims equals patent system stress test. Scope, electric lighting. Significance, showed need for patentability standards. 1881 CE, Red Cross emblem protection. Equation, humanitarian symbol plus universal adoption equals non-commercial commons. Scope, Geneva Conventions. Significance, created globally recognized, unprotected symbol for public good. 1883, Paris Convention patents. Equation, international priority plus 1-year window equals global patent filing. Scope, industrial property. Significance, began international IP harmonization. 1886, Berne Convention. Equation, min copyright term equals life plus 50 years international standard. Scope, multinational agreement on copyright protections. Significance, harmonized copyright terms globally, but delayed entry of works into the public domain in many countries. 1890 CE, Sherman Antitrust Act. Equation, anti-monopoly law plus public interest equals private control limits. Scope, corporate abuses. Significance, curbed IP excesses. 1895, first film copyright US. Equation, kinetoscope recordings plus paper prints equals copyright loophole. Scope, Edison Company films. Significance, forced copyright law to address new media. 1896, German Civil Code BGB. Equation, should Recht contract law plus Sachenrecht property law equals exhaustion doctrine first sale rule. Scope, private sales terminating certain IP rights. Significance, allowed resale of copyrighted works, limiting private control. 1903, Blaistein v. Donaldson lithographing U.S. Equation, commercial art equals copyrightable, but public domain elements unprotected. Scope, private lawsuit over advertising posters. Significance, courts began delineating privately owned versus publicly free content. 1906, Pure Food and Drug Act U.S. Equation, product labels plus mandatory disclosure equals information commons. Scope, consumer protection. Significance, required sharing of safety information. 1908, Whitesmith v. Apollo U.S. Equation, piano rolls is not equal to copyrightable compositions. Scope, mechanical music reproductions. Significance, forced copyright law to adapt to new technologies. 1908, Copyright Act Canada. Equation, copyright equals life plus 50 years aligning with Berne. Scope, Canadian literary artistic works. Significance, Standardized Commonwealth Copyright Terms. 1909, U.S. Copyright Act. Equation, copyright equals 28 years plus optional 28 total 56 years possible. Scope, expanded to all published works with notice requirements. Significance, many works lapsed into the public domain if not renewed, enriching accessible culture. 1910 CE, Flexner Report on Medical Education. Equation, public health critique plus open distribution equals medical reform commons. Scope, U.S. medical training. Significance, influenced standardized, accessible medical knowledge. 1911, UK Copyright Act. Equation, life plus 50 years equals new Commonwealth standard. Scope, British Empire Copyright Terms. Significance, spread term standardization that would later affect PD globally. 1917, Russian Decree on Patents. Equation, Socialist Revolution plus abolished patents equals radical PD experiment. Scope, all inventions. Significance, short-lived alternative to proprietary innovation. 1920 CE, League of Nations Publications. Equation, international agreements plus public access equals global governance commons. Scope, post-WWI diplomacy. Significance, established precedent for freely available international law texts. 1924, Soviet No Copyright Decree. Equation, proletarian state plus abolished royalties equals radical knowledge sharing. Scope, post-revolution creative works. Significance, short-lived experiment in collective authorship. 1925, Scopes Monkey Trial. Equation, public education plus scientific facts equals curriculum commons. Scope, evolution teaching. Significance, affirmed public access to scientific knowledge. 1926, Book of the Month Club controversy. Equation, mass distribution plus copyright interpretation equals first sale doctrine test. Scope, commercial book clubs. Significance, clarified resale rights for copyrighted works. 1927 CE, Metropolis copyright battles. Equation, film edits plus international versions equals early derivative work disputes. Scope, cinematic intellectual property. Significance, highlighted cross-border IP inconsistencies. 1927, Soviet Authors' Rights Decree. Equation, state ownership plus 15-year terms equals socialist IP alternative. Scope, post-revolution creative works. Significance, short-lived collective model. 1928, Radio Act US. Equation, public airwaves plus private licenses equals broadcast IP tensions. Scope, emerging radio industry. Significance, created new PD private balance for intangible goods. 1929, first fashion copyright case. Equation, dress design plus utilitarian exclusion equals industry exemption. Scope, apparel industry. Significance, set lasting precedent for fashion IP. 1930, Plant Patent Act US. Equation, asexual plant reproduction plus 20-year term equals biotech IP. Scope, agricultural innovations. Significance, extended IP to living organisms. 1933 CE, National Park Guides. Equation, public lands plus informational materials equals environmental commons. Scope, visitor education. Significance, government works access. 1935 CE, Social Security Act US. Equation, public welfare data plus government records equals Administrative Commons. Scope, social insurance documentation. Significance, reinforced government works as inherently public domain. 1936, Restatement First of Torts U.S. Equation, unfair competition law equals protection for public domain business methods. Scope, trade practices and IP. Significance, recognized that some knowledge must remain free for competition. 1938, U.S. v. Classic, facts belong to everyone. Equation, facts plus data equals always public domain. Scope, election fraud case involving uncopyrightable records. Significance, cemented that raw information can't be owned. 1941, ASCAP versus radio broadcasters. Equation, performance rights plus public airwaves equals music access conflict. Scope, broadcast licensing. Significance, balanced creator rights with public access. 1942, penicillin patent policy. Equation, war necessity plus open production equals medical breakthrough acceleration. Scope, antibiotic manufacturing. Significance, demonstrated benefits of limited IP in crises. 1945 CE, ENIAC programming innovations. Equation, government-funded tech plus no software patents equals computing commons. Scope, early computer programming. Significance, unprotected breakthroughs enabled industry growth. 1945, UN Charter publication. Equation, international treaty plus no copyright equals global PD document. Scope, foundational international agreement. Significance, model for intergovernmental works as PD by nature. 1946, Lanham Act U.S. trademark law. Equation, brand protection plus consumer confusion test equals modern TM standard. Scope, commercial identifiers. Significance, formalized genericide into PD principle. 1947, UN Universal Declaration drafting. Equation, human rights plus knowledge access equals Article 27 balance. Scope, international law. Significance, linked IP to fundamental rights. 1948, Universal Copyright Convention. Equation, Cold War compromise plus copyright symbol equals alternative to burn. Scope, U.S. Soviet cultural relations. Significance, created parallel international system. 1950 CE, UNESCO World Heritage Concept. Equation, cultural sites plus global protection equals heritage commons. Scope, international preservation efforts. Significance, established framework for shared cultural stewardship. 1952, U.S. Patent Act codification. Equation, non-obviousness plus utility equals modern patent standard. Scope, post-war inventions. Significance, tightened patent quality requirements. 1953, DNA structure publication. Equation, fundamental discovery plus immediate publication equals scientific commons. Scope, genetic research. Significance, model for open science. 1957, Copyright Act India. Equation, copyright equals life plus 50 years post-independence law. Scope, former British colony adopting Berne standards. Significance, balanced creator rights and public access. 1960 CE, CERN Open Science. Equation, fundamental research plus disclosure equals scientific commons. Scope, particle physics. Significance, open access model. 1961, first software patent UK. Equation, computer program plus hardware implementation equals patent granted. Scope, Ferranti's curve drawing device. Significance, began digital IP debates. 1961, Brazilian folklore protection law. Equation, cultural expressions plus non-IP safeguards equals alternative model. Scope, traditional knowledge. Significance, early sui generis system. 1963 CE, March on Washington speech. Equation, public address plus no copyright equals civil rights commons. Scope, Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream. Significance, iconic speech entered public domain, amplifying its cultural impact. 1967, Stockholm Protocol Berne Convention. Equation, developing nations plus compulsory licenses equals limited PD exceptions. Scope, international copyright. Significance, first major exception to strict copyright for public access needs. 1969, ARPANET creation. Equation, public funding plus open protocols equals Digital Commons Foundation. Scope, early Internet. Significance, created infrastructure for global knowledge sharing. 1971, Project Gutenberg launch. Equation, volunteer transcription plus digital texts equals first ebook commons. Scope, PD literature digitization. Significance, pioneer of digital book preservation. 1972, Cohen v. California. Equation, T-shirt slogan is not equal to trademark infringement. Scope, free speech versus IP. Significance, limited IP's reach over public discourse. 1972, Sound Recordings Copyright Act, the PD freeze. Equation, pre-1972 recordings is not equal to public domain until 2067. Scope, early jazz, blues, and rock recordings. Significance, created a bizarre 95-year limbo for cultural artifacts. 1973 CE, Xerox PARC GUI innovations. Equation, unpatented interfaces plus commercial adoption equals tech diffusion model. Scope, personal computing. Significance, showed benefits of unprotected foundational tech. 1974, CAN to Commission US. Equation, software copyrightability plus literary works classification equals digital IP expansion. Scope, computer programs. Significance, paved way for proprietary software era. 1975, Homebrew Computer Club. Equation, hobbyist sharing plus open schematics equals personal computing revolution. Scope, Silicon Valley startups. Significance, seedbed for open hardware movement. 1976, U.S. Copyright Act overhaul. Equation, copyright equals life plus 50 years or 75/100 for corporate works. Scope, automatic protection without formal registration. Significance, major term extension delayed public domain growth for decades. 1977, Continental TV VGTE Sylvania US. Equation, private contracts e.g. licensing is not equal to override antitrust public access rules. Scope, franchise agreements restricting competition. Significance, reinforce that private agreements can't eliminate public domain safeguards. 1980, Linux kernel. Equation, open source plus collaboration equals software commons. Scope, OS development. Significance, shared infrastructure. 1980, Diamond v. Chakrabarty. Equation, genetically modified bacteria equals patentable. Scope, biotechnology. Significance, opened floodgates for life-form patents. 1982, U.S. vs. AT&T breakup. Equation, monopoly breakup plus technology licensing equals forced knowledge sharing. Scope, telecommunications. Significance, increased access to proprietary tech. 1983, GNU project launch. Equation, free software plus copyleft equals alternative to traditional PD. Scope, computer programming. Significance, created new models for preserving public access to creative works. 1984, Semiconductor Chip Protection Act. Equation, mask works plus 10-year term equals new IP category. Scope, computer chip designs. Significance, showed IP law adapting to digital age. 1985, Semiconductor mask work protection. Equation, chip designs plus sui generis rights equals hybrid IP category. Scope, microelectronics. Significance, created tech-specific protection model. 1987 CE, Montreal Protocol data sharing. Equation, environmental data plus global cooperation equals scientific commons. Scope, ozone depletion research. Significance, set precedent for open environmental data in global treaties. 1988, WIPO Beijing Treaty Prep. Equation, performers' rights plus digital era equals new neighboring rights. Scope, audiovisual works. Significance, expanded protection categories. 1989, Berne Convention Implementation Act U.S. Equation, formalities abolished plus automatic protection equals fewer works entering PD. Scope, creative works. Significance, reduced accidental PD entries. 1990, Photoshop 1.0 license. Equation, proprietary software plus creative tools equals new IP generation. Scope, digital art creation. Significance, redefined authorship in computer-assisted works. 1991, Feist Publications v. Rural Telephone U.S. Equation, factual data equals public domain, even if collected privately. Scope, copyrightability of phone directories. Significance, confirmed that private effort is not equal to copyright over public domain facts. 1992, Internet Engineering Task Force IETF Standards. Equation, RFC documents plus rough consensus equals open protocol development. Scope, Internet infrastructure. Significance, model for collaborative technical standards. 1993, Human Genome Project. Equation, genetic mapping plus open access equals biological commons. Scope, DNA research. Significance, international open science model. 1994, TRIPS Agreement. Equation, WTO members greater than or equal to Berne Convention terms enforceable via trade sanctions. Scope, global intellectual property standards. Significance, cemented life plus 50 as a worldwide baseline, limiting shorter terms. 1995, Internet Archive founding. Equation, web crawling plus PD preservation equals digital memory institution. Scope, born digital content. Significance, created new PD stewardship model. 1996 CE, WIPO Internet Treaties. Equation, digital works plus extended protections equals delayed public domain entry. Scope, WIPO Copyright Treaty. Significance, strengthened digital IP, complicating public domain access in online era. 1997, No Electronic Theft Act U.S. Equation, non-commercial infringement equals criminal liability. Scope, digital file sharing. Significance, expanded IP enforcement reach. 1998, Sonny Bono Act US. Equation, copyright equals life plus 70 years 95 120 for corporate works. Scope, retroactively extended existing copyrights. Significance, frozen U.S. public domain for 20 years, sparking debates on copyright overreach. 1998, Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Equation, DRM circumvention equals illegal even for PD uses. Scope, digital content. Significance, created new barriers to PD access. 1999, Creative Commons founded. Equation, standardized licenses plus voluntary PD dedication equals new sharing tools. Scope, digital content. Significance, enabled easier contribution to public domain-like status. 2000, African Union Model Law. Equation, genetic resources plus community rights equals anti-biopiracy framework. Scope, indigenous medicinal knowledge. Significance, countered Western IP extraction. 2001, traditional knowledge databases. Equation, indigenous remedies plus digital cataloging equals defensive protection. Scope, WIPO initiatives. Significance, attempt to prevent biopiracy. 2001, Eldred v. Ashcroft U.S. Supreme Court. Equation, court ruling equals copyright extensions are constitutional despite public domain harm. Scope, challenged Sonny Bono Act. Significance, set precedent for future extensions. 2002 CE, Budapest Open Access Initiative. Equation, scholarly articles plus free access equals academic commons. Scope, scientific publishing. Significance, formalized open access as a public domain-aligned movement. 2003, Public Library of Science PLOS launch. Equation, open access plus author fees equals scientific publishing revolution. Scope, academic journals. Significance, challenged paywall models. 2004 CE, Facebook's The Facebook launch. Equation, campus network plus no ads equals early social media commons. Scope, Harvard Student Platform. Significance, initial non-commercial knowledge sharing model. 2004, EU Software Patents Directive failure. Equation, open source lobbying plus public protests equals policy reversal. Scope, computer implemented inventions. Significance, preserved software innovation commons. 2005, OSFTA and global term alignment. Equation, Australia life plus 70 following US pressure. Scope, bilateral trade-driven copyright extension. Significance, demonstrated how trade agreements could prolong copyrights internationally. 2005, YouTube's Content ID equation, automated detection plus rights management equals new enforcement paradigm. Scope, user-generated content. Significance, created hybrid system of takedowns and monetization. 2005, Australia-US Free Trade Agreement OSFTA. Equation, Australia life plus 70 years under US pressure. Scope, bilateral trade deal. Significance, showed copyright term inflation via trad. 2006, Google Book settlement debate. Equation, orphan works plus mass digitization equals PD access questions. Scope, book scanning project. Significance, highlighted tension between copyright and public access to lost works. 2007, Free Software Foundation v Cisco. Equation, GPL violations plus embedded code equals enforcement precedent. Scope, open source licensing. Significance, strengthened copyleft as PD alternative. 2008, EU Database Directive revisited. Equation, sui generis database rights equals private control, but facts remain PD scope, protection for non-creative data compilations. Significance, attempted to privatize data, but upheld public domain facts. 2009, Pirate Bay trial. Equation, file sharing plus copyright defiance equals global access debate. Scope, digital piracy. Significance, highlighted demand for accessible content. 2010, Hathitrust Digital Library. Equation, PD works plus digital access equals cultural preservation. Scope, academic book digitization. Significance, created new models for PD work accessibility. 2010, Bilski v. Capos. Equation, business methods is not equal to automatic patents. Scope, financial systems. Significance, limited overbroad software patents. Methodology, regression analysis on copyright term extensions, renewal rates, and creative output indices. 2011, Sci-Hub launch. Equation, paywall circumvention plus mass access equals academic liberation. Scope, journal articles. Significance, challenged scholarly publishing monopolies. 2012, Golan v. Holder U.S. Supreme Court. Equation, court ruling equals works can be restored from public domain under TRIPS. Scope, foreign works previously PD in the U.S. Significance, eroded public domain stability. 2012 CE, 3D printing patent expirations. Equation, expired patents plus maker movement equals manufacturing democratization. Scope, additive manufacturing. Significance, enabled open hardware innovation surge. 2012, Mega Upload shutdown. Equation, cloud storage plus copyright enforcement equals digital sharing crackdown. Scope, file hosting services. Significance, highlighted tensions in digital content distribution. 2013, Kurtzang v. John Wiley & Sons U.S. Equation, first sale doctrine equals applies globally limiting private copyright control. Scope, textbook resale case. Significance, strengthened public domain-like access via exhaustion rights. 2013, Myriad genetics case. Equation, human genes is not equal to patentable. Scope, genetic testing. Significance, protected medical PD from privatization. 2014, Tesla patent pledge. Equation, Elon Musk's announcement plus open source patents equals electric vehicle sharing. Scope, sustainable technology. Significance, corporate experiment with strategic openness. 2014, Indian Traditional Knowledge Library. Equation, Yoga Sutras plus digital documentation equals defensive publication. Scope, ancient practices. Significance, blocked foreign patent claims. 2014, copyright term extension Mexico. Equation, Mexico life plus 100 years longest term globally. Scope, posthumous works. Significance, extreme example of term inflation. 2015, EU Trade Secrets Directive. Equation, corporate secrets plus uniform protection equals knowledge enclosure. Scope, business information. Significance, new threats to PD information access. 2016, EU copyright reform protests. Equation, Article 13 plus public outcry equals digital rights movement. Scope, Internet regulation. Significance, showed public stake in copyright policy. 2016, European a public domain charter. Equation, cultural heritage plus digital access equals formal PD protections. Scope, EU cultural institutions. Significance, first international charter specifically defending public domain. 2017, CRISPR patent battles. Equation, gene editing plus competing claims equals biotech IP warfare. Scope, genetic engineering. Significance, highlighted stakes in foundational technology ownership. 2017, Star Athletica v Varsity brands. Equation, cheerleader uniforms plus separable art equals expanded copyright. Scope, useful articles. Significance, potentially reduced PD design elements. 2017, GDPR right to data portability. Equation, personal data plus transfer rights equals information commons element. Scope, EU privacy law. Significance, gave individuals control over their digital traces. 2018, EU Public Sector Information Directive. Equation, government data plus machine readability equals open data mandate. Scope, public sector data sets. Significance, accelerated data-driven innovation. 2018, modernized EU copyright directive. Equation, PD art reproductions is not equal to new copyright. Scope, museum collections. Significance, prevented copyright creep on PD material reproductions. 2019, The Great PD Thaw. Equation, 1923 works plus 95 years equals PD at last. Scope, silent films, early Hemingway, The Ten Commandments. Significance, first major PD expansion in 21 years. 2019, U.S. public domain unfreeze. Equation, post-1923 works PD after 95 years first major influx since 1998. Scope, classics like Metropolis, Winnie the Pooh. Significance, renewed cultural access after 20-year drought. 2019, Blender Open Movie Projects. Equation, free software plus CC licensed assets equals new production model. Scope, 3D animation. Significance, proved PD compatible commercial viability. 2019 CE, deepfake copyright debates. Equation, AI generated likenesses plus existing IP equals new infringement frontiers. Scope, synthetic media. Significance, challenged traditional authorship concepts. 2020, COVID-19 Research Commons. Equation, public health emergency plus open science equals temporary PD expansion. Scope, medical research. Significance, showed potential for deliberate PD expansion in crises. 2020, open ventilator designs. Equation, crisis innovation plus open blueprints equals emergency commons. Scope, medical devices. Significance, rapid global sharing. 2020, Allen v. Cooper U.S. Equation, state sovereign immunity is not equal to overrides public domain status of works. Scope, copyright clash over Blackbeard's ship footage. Significance, block states from privatizing public domain material. 2020, Georgia v. public.resource.org. Equation, state legal codes plus official edicts equals PD status confirmed. Scope, judicial opinions. Significance, protected access to laws. 2021, DALL-E Generative AI Release. Equation, clip model plus prompt engineering equals synthetic content explosion. Scope, AI image generation. Significance, challenged originality standards. 2021, NFT art boom. Equation, digital scarcity plus blockchain equals new ownership paradigms. Scope, crypto art. Significance, challenged traditional PD concepts. 2021, Clubhouse audio controversy. Equation, ephemeral conversations plus unauthorized recording equals new content dilemmas. Scope, social audio platforms. Significance, tested boundaries of transitory content protection. 2021, Thaler v. Hirschfeld. Equation, AI-generated inventions is not equal to patentable. Scope, machine-created IP. Significance, maintained human authorship requirement. 2021, Copyright Directive EU Digital Single Market. Equation, public domain artworks no new rights over reproductions freedom to reuse. Scope, digital reproductions of PD art. Significance, protected PD from copyright creep. 2022, U.S. Copyright Office PD modernization. Equation, 1926 works plus 96 years equals new PD entries. Scope, U.S. copyright term. Significance, established predictable annual PD growth for first time. 2022, Warhol v. Goldsmith, fair use under fire. Equation, PD derivative works, transformative standard equals legal risk. Scope, photography and art. Significance, made PD-based creativity legally hazardous. 2022, Ukraine cultural heritage backup. Equation, war destruction plus blockchain preservation equals emergency PD safeguarding. Scope, national monuments. Significance, new model for protecting vulnerable cultural PD 2022 CE, Web3 Creative Commons. Equation, NFTs plus CC licensing equals decentralized content models. Scope, blockchain-based art. Significance, new models for attribution in digital art. 2023, Reddit API protest. Equation, user-generated content plus corporate monetization equals digital labor strike. Scope, online communities. Significance, showed power of collective digital action. 2023, Shakespeare First Folio PD Anniversary. Equation, 400 years plus no copyright equals ultimate PD icon. Scope, literary works. Significance, celebrated longest standing PD cultural treasure. 2023, AI and public domain debates. Equation, AI training data plus PD works equals legal battles e.g. Getty v. Stability AI. Scope, generative AI and fair use. Significance, testing boundaries of PD in the digital age. 2023 CE, EU AI transparency. Equation, AI systems plus disclosures equals algorithmic commons. Scope, model documentation. Significance, public AI principles. 2023, Twitter algorithm release. Equation, corporate IP plus public disclosure equals transparency experiment. Scope, social media. Significance, tested boundaries of trade secrets. 2024, AI training data battles. Equation, public domain content plus AI equals copyright gray area. Scope, ChatGPT, Midjourney, etc. Significance, testing whether PD works can be remonopolized via datasets. 2024, WHO Pandemic Agreement Draft. Equation, vaccine recipes plus compulsory sharing equals global health PD test. Scope, pharmaceutical patents. Significance, potential new model for crisis IP management. 2024, EU chat control laws. Equation, message scanning plus privacy trade-offs equals encryption battles. Scope, digital communications. Significance, new conflicts between security and surveillance. 2024, NASA Artemis Accords Lunar Heritage. Equation, space artifacts plus no ownership claims equals extraterrestrial PD scope, lunar landing sites. Significance, first off-planet PD framework. 2025, projected Mickey Mouse PD entry. Equation, 1928 creation plus 95 years equals corporate copyright expiration. Scope, character copyrights. Significance, will test modern enforcement of PD principles. 2025, AI-generated IP taxation proposals. Equation, machine creations plus public datasets equals knowledge value recapture. Scope, generative AI outputs. Significance, may fund PD expansion through tech taxes. 2025 CE, neural interface IP battles. Equation, brainwave patterns plus creative output equals novel ownership claims. Scope, neurotechnology. Significance, will test boundaries of human-machine authorship. 2025, quantum computing patents. Equation, fundamental physics plus proprietary claims equals new IP frontier. Scope, emerging technology. Significance, will test patent systems limits. Conclusion, quantifying the public domain's evolution and future trajectory. The historical trajectory of the public domain reveals a dynamic interplay between enclosure and access, innovation and preservation. By analyzing key patterns, we can model its growth, predict future expansions, and assess the economic and cultural impact of intellectual commons. Mathematical insights, modeling the public domain's expansion. One-term extension versus public domain growth exponential decay model. Copyright terms have followed an accelerating expansion, particularly in the 20th century. If we model the maximum copyright term T over time T, we observe /TT equals 14 /.1 plus RT 1710 100 /1710 statute of N, 14 years plus 14 renewal. 1909 U.S. Act, 28 plus 28 equals 56 years. 1976 U.S. Act, life plus 50-75 years average. 1998 Sonny Bono Act, life plus 70-95 years average. Growth rate are 2.5% per decade, suggesting a doubling time of 280 years. However, recent extensions e.g. Mexico's life plus 100 indicate possible asymptotic convergence toward a de facto perpetual copyright unless policy intervenes. 2. Public domain thaw after freeze's step function analysis. The U.S. experienced a 20-year freeze 1978 to 1998 due to term extensions, followed by annual releases post-2019. The volume of works entering the PD follows, /PD_year equals N_pub, year /.1, P_renewal /. Pre-1964, 85% of works were not renewed P0.15. Post-1976, automatic renewal P1.0 near zero PD entries until term expiry. 2019 to 2040, 50,000 plus works year entering PD post 1923. 3. Economic value of the public domain. Cobb-Douglas production function. The PD acts as an input to creative production, with estimated elasticity of output alpha 0.3 in knowledge sectors, \y equals a \k alpha pd1 alpha y equals creative output books, films, patents. K equals capital labor invested. PD equals public domain material available. A equals total factor productivity. Studies suggest 10 to 30% of new creative works derive from PD sources, e.g. Shakespeare adaptations, open source software. Key discoveries and future projections. 1. The copyright cliff 2025 to 2070. 2025, Mickey Mouse Steamboat Willie enters PD 6B plus Disney franchise exposure. 2030s, Superman, Batman, early Disney films follow. 2050s, Beatles recordings, Star Wars 1977 eligible. 2070s, modern blockbusters e.g. Titanic, Harry Potter. Implication: corporate lobbying may push for further extensions, but AI-generated derivatives could disrupt traditional IP economics. 2. AI and the public domain data input-output model. Generative AI trains on PD works at scale, \\, text training efficiency \, proto \, log text PD corpus size \. GPT-4, 15 to 25% of training data from PD sources. Project Gutenberg, AR14. Stable diffusion, 30% of LEN 5B dataset is PDCC licensed. Future risk: if AI monopolizes PD-based outputs, we may see synthetic enclosures where corporations control PD-derived content via proprietary models. 3. The open source multiplier effect. Open source software OSS demonstrates the PD's economic leverage, \\, text OSS value equals \1012 text 2025 estimate, Linux Foundation \. 90% of enterprises use OSS. 50% faster innovation cycles in open licensed sectors. Projection: similar gains possible in open biotech, e.g. CRISPR Commons, 3D printing, and renewable energy patents. Policy levers for a sustainable public domain. To prevent stagnation, we propose: 1. Fixed-term reversion, patents, reduce from 20 to 15 years with faster approval. Copyright, cap at life plus 50 aligning with Berne minima. 2. PD tax incentives, 1 to 5% R&D tax credit for firms releasing works early into PD. 3. AI transparency mandates, dataset disclosure laws, e.g. EU AI Act to prevent PD laundering. 4. Global Knowledge Commons Fund, 0.1% royalty levy on IP revenues to support open access archives. Final synthesis: the public domain as civilization's immune system. The data reveals a fragile equilibrium. Pre-1700s, 100% of knowledge was de facto PD. 2025, 0.1% of new works enter PD yearly due to term lengths. 2150 projection: without reform, PD growth near zero. Yet, the marginal cost of digital replication zero suggests that optimal PD expansion should accelerate, not shrink. The mathematical, economic, and cultural evidence converges on one imperative: the public domain must grow at least as fast as human knowledge itself. Otherwise, we risk intellectual sclerosis, a world where the past is owned, the present is monetized, and the future is locked away before it can be born. Data sources: WIPO, U.S. Copyright Office, EU Open Data Portal, Linux Foundation, Hatha-Trust, Crossref. Methodology, regression analysis on copyright term extensions, renewal rates, and creative output indices.
You framed a thought, put your surname in the corner, stamped it, signed it, stored it in a fireproof drawer. I underlined the margin. Was this ever really yours? Ideas drifting through the hallway. You just happened to close the door. Paper walls and public words. You draw lines through the air like you own the verbs. How do you fence in something heard? Paper walls and public words. You keep calling it mine. Yours, mine. And it lives outside those terms. Jargon and of secrets, reading footnotes like they're bolts across a fence. But language has a habit of leaking through